back to hour number 2 of the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. I am Gary Sutton, and glad to be with you here. And, it's not all about elections today. Fort Hood, for example, today is observing a somber milestone. It's the 50th anniversary of the deadly 2009 massacre at the sprawling Army base in Texas. Former Major Nadal Hassan is currently sitting on death row at Fort Leavenworth for killing 13 people and injuring more than 30 others. And you remember Hassan opened fire on the Soldier Readiness Processing Center because he was angry about being deployed to Afghanistan. And the massacre was stopped when Hassan was shot by 2 civilian base officers. Hassan was found guilty last year and sentenced to death. An execution date has not yet been set. One of the guys who is thinking about that anniversary this morning is here with us in studio. He is U.S. Army retired veteran, and he is Ryan Walton, who joins us this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. Good morning, Ryan. How are you?
Good morning, Gary. How you doing?
Great. And you honor us by being here in the studio with us this morning. Thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, Gary.
Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've been with us before. For people who have never heard your background as a soldier, you served our country honorably, and this particular day marks a very specific moment of remembrance for you.
It's very important, yes. I know I started off in the Pennsylvania National Guard. Volunteered to go to Mexico on some missions there, came home and enjoyed active duty so much that I wanted to continue on active duty service. So continued active duty, went active duty, I should say, and went to Iraq. And then after sustaining some injuries in Iraq, when I came home a few months later, I met my wife and things, and we had a child on the way. November 5th happened 5 years ago today. And I would say it's definitely one of the worst days to get through in my life. I have a great wife, great a family structure in our house that helps me get through that, as well as my family outside of the house as well.
Now, for people who aren't aware, you were actually at Fort Hood that day, and you actually were right there at that particular place. We were talking about the Soldier Readiness Processing Center, helping people at that particular point in time. Tell us how that whole thing unfolded and your role that you played in helping at that point.
Well, the amazing thing is I should have been out to lunch with my wife. I had just come off of a 24-hour duty, point of CQ shift, and I was asked to do a quick job, and around noon it was to run a weapon down to one of the sergeants who was in training. He was about to go out to the range. So we took that weapon down. It could have went two ways. If we would have taken the Humvee, we wouldn't have been anywhere near there. We would have been on the back roads. But we took the unit civilian vehicle van, and we were on the main roads. And it was an unusually warm day in November, which, in Texas, the weather goes up and down. It can be warmer. It's about 85 degrees that day. I remember everything from the temperature to what I'm about to get to next. And
right.
And what happened was we were at the gas station, and one of the soldiers came running up to me. He was covered in blood. And I was shocked to see that. I saw that in training, but I've never seen that, fake blood, but I never saw it in a situation. I thought this was a training drill. And I looked at Staff Sergeant Biggs, who was my partner there that day, and we watched each other's back. And we took off running right to the site, and you could hear the cracking in the distance of the rounds, and it was just unbelievable. It was something you don't prepare for, but mentally your body it took over, and it mechanically did everything that I did that day. And
now, was the firing still going on when you got there to the site?
Not in the room. No. Yeah. I worried about being in imminent danger?
Sure.
Yes. Did I think about it? No, I couldn't, because, getting in that room and already walking over the bullets and things that were already discharged, I just went to work.
Yeah.
I didn't put gloves on. I just went to work.
And you talk about going into that room. We don't want to, we're not going to try to be graphic on the scene here, but obviously there were people injured. Obviously there's people dead at that particular point in time. What did you start to do?
I just went to the first patient that I saw, and when I knew that they had passed, I moved on to the next one. The first one that I did come across who did have a faint pulse was Private Velez, and everybody will know her as the pregnant female that passed. The difficult part is that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
It was an innocent child, not just her, but, it's her baby. And, we got her outside, and that's when I think it started to hit me that what I was doing. So
yeah. I mean, I imagine the adrenaline just is taking over. Your training probably takes over. Your discipline takes over, and you say, I've got to go and being a human being takes over. I've got to go run and help these people that are under attack right now, that are under assault by this guy. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, maybe it crosses your mind, well, someone's shooting. Is there somebody else in there? You didn't know all that. I guess you're kind of assessing the situation, too, as you're running through it.
Right. One thing I did notice is there was two different areas. There was the door in and the door out. There was people running out the back door, and there was enlisted soldiers running in the front door.
Right.
The enlisted soldiers that were running in went straight to work.
Yeah.
They all. There's brave men and women left and right in all states in the United States right now, and without them, I wouldn't have been able to do anything that day. But the main thing is it wasn't just inside; it was outside as well.
Right.
And one thing locally that hits home, and I know this, I've spoken with nurses in Baltimore County and people from Pittsburgh. Lieutenant Colonel Warman is very important to me because I saw her and she was laying next to the brick wall. And
she was, just for people's information.
And she really was. It's almost like she got outside. There's some background story there. People can look that up, but. So I ran up to her and talked to her, and I felt a faint pulse, and I said, ma'am, and she opened her eyes. I didn't know she was an officer. I saw her rank later on, and I yelled, and Sergeant Biggs came over as well as some other soldiers. We got her on a litter, and I fought tooth and nail, Gary, and everybody out there to get her on an ambulance, and I grabbed her foot, and I said, they're going to take care of you now. And the last thing I remember her is thanking me.
Yeah. And she did not make it then.
She passed en route to the hospital. Right. But I was honored to meet her family.
Yeah.
Her sister, and later on, a year later, her mother, when I received the Meritorious Service Medal in Fort Hood. And I, about 4 days after the incident, and when President Obama came down and there was the ceremony, I met with them at their hotel. And we had an emotional kind of meeting, and I gave them the patch off my uniform that had her blood on it.
Yeah.
And
wow. You're welcome to call in and talk to Ryan this morning, too, as well, and ask him some questions or some thoughts as you hear this story. 1-800-357-0910, the 5th anniversary of the first, and we have to say the first Fort Hood shooting, because there was a second one that took place later on. This shooting later on, the president, who you had a chance to meet, said it was workplace violence, that it was not a carefully planned attack. And you have some different feelings about that, I think. Tell us a little bit.
Well, you have to look at the situation as a whole and prior to the situation and the shooting. And if you look, they knew that at the time, Captain Hassan.
Right.
Was at Walter Reed Hospital, and that he had some different thoughts and different opinions on going overseas and things. So he was promoted to major and moved to Fort Hood. It was later found that he had been talking with Al Qaeda leaders overseas for almost 6 months, Gary, for almost 6 months prior to this happening, and yet he was still transferred and promoted to Fort Hood. So that's premeditated in more, and specifically asking that if I am an American soldier and wearing the uniform, but I have my Muslim beliefs and I am contacting terrorist cells, Al Qaeda, things like that, will I be a martyr for killing American soldiers?
Right.
That email was found. How can this be workplace violence? And I'm not. This in no way. I'm trying to help the soldiers who were injured, who were killed, to be recognized in a different way.
Right.
Not in workplace violence, but in an act of terrorism.
Well, and again, you talk about benefits for families, too. That certainly was affected by the fact that this was characterized as workplace violence instead of an act of terrorism by a guy who clearly had the kinds of beliefs that terrorists have, who clearly said that he was on that side, who clearly called himself a soldier of Allah, who clearly, when he went out about doing the work that day, was fighting for, in a sense, terrorists across the ocean, who you had already seen up close and personal. So, the idea that now he's on death row for workplace violence, and yet the workplace violence lets a lot of these heroes' families out in the lurch. It lets a lot of them, in terms of their lives and their story afterward, kind of unended, I think is a real problem here for America at the moment.
I agree with you exactly, Gary, and it's always unending for me. Every year that's gone by now to the 5-year anniversary today, it's not been forgotten in myself, and I know that those families, I wish I could speak with them today, but at the end of the day, that what went on in there was nothing of workplace violence. It was a planned attack, and there's even empirical research, Gary, that shows that he before he started shooting, he put his head down on the table. He was praying, and then he stood up, yelled Allah Akbar, which is God is great, and began shooting at soldiers. And the rounds that he did use were 22s, but at the velocity that they came out of the weapon that he had, would have penetrated bulletproof vests as well.
Wow. 1-800-357-0910 if you'd like to talk to Ryan. He's going to be with us this morning until 10:30 here on the Gary Sutton Show. We'll be taking a break in just a moment. So you come out of that situation, and all of us watch the horror of that and over several days, and there comes a point in time where the quiet comes, and you got to sit down and you're assessing what went on. What went through your mind?
What was I thinking?
Yeah.
Why did I put myself in that position?
Yeah.
I'll just say I woke up this morning to a horrible night terror. I thought I was back there again, and this is, it happens often, but I wouldn't change it. I would do it all over again. I don't want it to ever happen again, but I wouldn't take back any of my actions that day. I mean, I was honored to be beside many enlisted soldiers and officers who were assisting and getting care to those patients. And I guess, it's still scary. It's still a horrible thing to witness and know.
1-800-357-0910 is our number here on the Gary Sutton Show with Ryan Walton this morning, United States Army, retired. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that's happened to Ryan since he's come back, and in terms of people helping him. We'll take your calls as well. 1-800-357-0910. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Ryan Walton is a veteran of the United States Army, one of the heroes who's among us, and was there at Fort Hood on that day 5 years ago. We got John on the line to talk to Ryan. John, you're on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. You're on to talk with Ryan Walton. Go ahead, John. Your turn to make the call.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Ryan. I just want to thank you for your service, first of all.
Thank you, John.
I just moved to this area. It's fate, I guess, in a way. I was listening to your story, and I almost got emotional. But my nephew, my last name is Munley, Munley, and my nephew, I actually told my brother and nephew the day it happened. I was listening to a station in Baltimore, and I called him, and he was married to the civilian police officer, Kim Munley.
Yes, I know her.
Who helped take the guy down with her partner. But I just want to say thanks for your service, and I think it's bothered me ever since it happened that they have the nerve for what you guys go through to call this workplace violence. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John.
That means a lot. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for calling. And it's kind of I guess a lot of people would look at it as a disrespectful thing to call it workplace violence.
Yes, it is. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, there was a second shooting, and that was too called workplace violence. Now, if you look at the details between the both of them, there's no such thing.
Right.
So
Yeah, this idea of workplace violence, and you add something that's been so familiar as this Muslim extremism, and here, we're seeing it all over the place. Dean in York Springs is up with you next. Dean, you're on the Gary Sutton Show with Ryan Walton. 1-800-357-0910 is our number. Good morning, Dean. How you doing? Ryan's right here to talk to you.
Hi, Dean.
Hi, Ryan. I just wanted to say a couple things, but real fast. Thank you for your service. I think I talked to you the last time you were on. It's really great to hear you again. I know you said it's hard. It must be really hard to get through something like this, and I just wish you all the best, and I hope you are doing it. I guess it does change you probably for life, being on our home base.
Yes, it's a lot different, Dean, than what I saw over in Iraq, and I did a lot of recovery and things like that in Iraq, but having it on your home turf, just like we all know, is September 11th. Seeing it firsthand, I never in my life, graduating high school, everything, would have thought that I would have been a part of such event. But thank you, Dean, for your support, and thank you for thinking of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. God bless.
Dean, thanks so much for your call. 1-800-357-0910. You're welcome to get in with Ryan Walton. You're also a wounded veteran. You were hurt in Iraq. I know you stepped through that. I forget what the name for it is.
It was a blast hole, the moon dust. That's what it was. Yeah, it was almost like flour, like powdered sugar, flour combination. Yeah. And it looked just like the road was there. And, it's... My spine is kind of taking a turn for the worse, and with my injuries, but like I said, with my support with my wife and family, it really helps having that in home. My wife is my caregiver, and her being there for me and helping me really means a lot.
And I'm sure the bond gets closer and closer every day.
It does. It gets difficult at times. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and coat the wall with powdered sugar. But at the end of the day, my wife, I know, loves me and really does support me and supports everything we do. So.
Let's take another call. Tom in York, you're up next with Ryan Walton. Go ahead, Tom. Your turn to make the call.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Good morning, guys. I just want to say that one of the things I want to say about WSBA and listening to Michael Savage afternoon is he was one of the few, if not the only, person of record and stature in the media that made it clear that between Presidents Carter and Clinton, they took the firearms out of the soldiers' hands, that we had to have a civilian cop or whoever it was after the duration this Nadal guy did to be able to strike him down. When the soldiers are on the base, they can't have their own firearms, and we can't have respect for them, that we have this attitude by politicians in our country that look at our American military men as people of evil and not people of responsibility, who understand the magnitude of that people with training with guns are the ones who respect them the most, let alone someone in the military who has the most training with them, is a real disgrace. And it's about time these politicians are looked at with specificity in the public eye and verbally told to knock it off. Their philosophy is demented, and we need to have more respect for our military men and women, that they are allowed to have firearms on base.
We got it, Tom. Got the point. Thank you, Tom. But Ryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say to that, Tom, thank you for that. And that is important. And also, it is important to, I have a few minutes left here, and I do want to touch on Pennsylvania Wounded Warriors Incorporated. But the one thing that I want to say about that is that weapons are not the issue in soldiers' hands, with soldiers, even with PTSD.
Right.
There's certain administrations that even talk about taking their weapons away by force, bringing state police into their home with threats, using threats like that. It's all about safety and using common sense when using a firearm. So thank you, Tom, for that.
What was ironic in this case is you were taking a weapon to an officer. Is that correct?
To a sergeant.
To a sergeant. Yeah.
Yes.
So sergeant had the weapon at that moment.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't have any rounds with the weapon, so it wouldn't matter any good. Maybe as a scare tactic, but
again, you think about, we act sometimes like it's the rule, not the exception for soldiers. Well, I'd certainly take my chance with any soldier anywhere, and you have an exception like Major Nadal Hassan or Captain Nadal Hassan, who went off and used it in the wrong way, but the majority of people out there responsible. Final thought here. I know you wanted to mention about Pennsylvania Wounded Warriors. They've helped you a lot.
Yes. Pennsylvania Wounded Warriors Incorporated, they're main mission, is to help restore, wounded warriors to good physical, mental, and emotional health as well.
Right.
They really help us, and I can speak on behalf of one emotional moment that they're a 501c. They're an all-volunteer organization, and I myself am giving back to them by helping them all I can. But they really helped our family last winter. And, there's wounded veterans out there, worse off than me and things like that. But feel free to look them up online. Again, that's Pennsylvania Wounded Warriors, Inc. They are of no affiliation with the federal organization Wounded Warrior Program. So they leave no warrior without help. And Helen Sazier is an amazing woman. Her husband, just the story behind it is fantastic, Gary, and it's amazing.
There's something you can check out there too, Pennsylvania Wounded Warrior, and go to pawoundedwarriors.org if you want to find out more about that. They've certainly been helping Ryan, and you can also give them a call if you'd like at 1-855-729-9435. They're located in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Ryan, it's been an honor having you with us this morning. I know it's tough bringing back these memories, and yet we should never forget when someone attacks our soldiers, when they attack our country. And no, it's not workplace violence. It is an attack, and we have to be aware of that and continue to make sure that we remember with heroes like you who have been among us. We thank you so much. We're honored that you're with us.
Thank you so much, Gary. I look forward to continuing to speak with you on a daily basis like we do. So
thank you so much.